Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. So, it's been a while since I've done one of these kind of opinion pieces, but I've had quite a few opinions lately. Those who have been watching the streams can probably attest to that. And I have wanted to talk about this particular topic for quite a while. What inspired me to finally kind of make this video is in our Discord server recently, someone shared one of Farfa's highlight videos wherein he goes over this Reddit thread. It's called something like how Yugi boomers are gaslit nowadays or something like that. And there are all these like kind of insane ramblings, it seems like, where someone's just talking about the state of Yu-Gi-Oh! And how it sucks and blah, 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 blah. And one of the things that I noticed was there was this reaction to it from a lot of people of like, this is like such an insane rant. I can't believe like this got posted over on r/masterduel. And I see people saying, you know, that, and I'm like, well, yeah, it's r/masterduel. That's like a daily occurrence over there. So this is something you've probably heard me talk about at least once or twice in like a video or on a stream or something, that there are some kind of wild Yu-Gi-Oh takes out there. And a lot of them tend to come from r/masterduel, which I'm just going to say it. If you want to improve at Yu-Gi-Oh! In any meaningful, competitive way, this is probably one of the worst places on the internet you could go to do so. So before we start talking about the subreddit itself, I want to give a little bit of background info that I don't know if everyone is actually aware of regarding r/masterduel. If you look up Yu-Gi-Oh! Masterduel subreddits, you might actually find that there's two. There's r/masterduel as well as r/Yu-Gi-Oh! Masterduel. From what I understand, this is based off of like comments I saw back when Masterduel first came out and these subreddits were forming. From what I remember, the idea is that r/Masterduel is moderated by Decade, YugiTuber, some of you are probably familiar with, whereas Yu-Gi-Oh! Masterduel, that subreddit, I think is moderated by, I don't know, I think it's some of the people who do the r/Yu-Gi-Oh! Moderating. I'm not a part of Reddit moderator series, if you can believe it. And for the record, another thing I also want to say too is that none of the criticisms that I am going to be making about the community about r/Masterduel is indicative of any opinions I may or may not have about Decade. In fact, I think that Decade provides a fantastic service with the Masterduel Meta website, which, as you all on the channel know, is a site that I use quite a bit, and I subscribe to it, you know, monthly for the premium service to kind of give back in that regard. So I just want to make that abundantly clear. I have no ill will regarding who owns or operates these subreddits. I'm speaking specifically about the community in particular. So while the thread that Farfa covered, I believe from what I remember he said in the video, has actually been since deleted, we can't really go back and review that one. I figured we would go ahead and just dive right into the hornet's nest and see what is happening on r/Masterduel. I'm starting with the top post of the month. I feel like that's a good indicator of where the community is kind of at, this community in particular, rather. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through these and read them, react to them, I guess, as I go. Sort of the top, I think it was actually kind of interesting. Up until an hour ago, I always thought Quinn was standing like this, indicating the stick figure with the leg out this way. But if you scroll here, you can actually see both of her feet are over here, and this is part of her dress. So that's, you know, I actually always thought it was this way too. So, you know, occasionally, this is the top post of the month, to be fair, but occasionally you do actually see something interesting over here. Okay, so another one of the top kind of meme posts is a very much recurring meme. You're gonna see this happen a lot on r/Masterduel. That's the thing, even the memes, honestly, not really that great. So I'm looking at this meme here, you know, another baneless leather dodge for Sprite Elf. There is, for some reason, still this expectation that Sprite Elf is going to get hit, despite the fact that it is not too generic, as people have said it is. It was used with exactly Merly and Sprite decks, as, you know, being a Sprite card, you'd expect it to be used in Sprite decks. Which, to be fair, that sentiment is generally echoed here. However, there was one reply here that I thought was a little interesting that I wanted to highlight here. Elf, while not looking problematic right now, nor in the near future, had been a problem card in several formats. Lastly, during the time Tier and Sprite shared Tier 1 time in Masterduel, and while some bans are reasonable, Merly, a bunch of other hits were done just to avoid banning Elf, causing severe hits to several rank 2 engines that weren't themselves problematic. I would like to know what these several or bunch of other hits are. I think this person might be referring to exactly Totally Awesome, which is debatably not even really that great to have around, while Ronin Totem and Swap Frog are also still around. I think in that trifecta, Ronin is actually the issue, but that's a whole other argument. If Elf was banned, deck building options for several rogue or below archetypes could be increased by the unbans, while Sprite would regain some relevance with returning potential main deck tools, but more interesting inboards than Elf's classic use sprites, negate sprites for combo, than summon them back. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of how sprites work, and really just what they provide for rogue decks. This person is saying that if Elf was gone, there would be more rogue options available. But if you think about all of the decks that are played with Sprite right now, right? I'm particularly thinking of decks like Live Twin, like Gishki, such as Fur Hire. These decks all have a very hard time staying as relevant without the Sprite engine helping them, and I definitely think that they're wrong that Elf always boils down to using red and carrot. That's what they mean by the negate sprites for combo and then summoning them back, because if you think about these different Sprite variants, right, they're not just using their unique archetypes tools in order to push out a generic Sprite end board. Gishki Sprite ends on Gishki monsters. Live Twin Sprite ends on the Evil Twins. For Hire Sprite builds end on the For Hire monsters. Synchro Sprite ends on high-level Synchro monsters. So I think that this is just a fundamental... What I think is actually happening here, really, is this is what I call being quote-unquote TCG brained. When I say the phrase like TCG brained, what I mean is this is a player who's so enfranchised with how the TCG handles the game, its ban list and its deck building, etc., that they think that should always apply to Master Duel no matter what. I think that there is this idea that because, especially when a card is banned in multiple formats, because Elf is banned in TCG and OCG, surely it needs to be banned in Master Duel too, right? Well, no, I 100% disagree with this. Pure Sprite is not seeing any amount of success, really, in comparison to other Sprite variants, except for if you look at the Duelist Cup Top 100, but as I've discussed in the past, that is not an honest representation of the meta. It favors decks that can OTK or win quickly, like Pure Sprite, and its multiple avenues for OTK. I think the most laughable line, honestly, in this reply in particular, is that Sprite would regain relevance if Elf was being banned. No, it would not. I can assure you that Sprite and all its variants would see even less play than they do right now. And really, if you look at Elf and look outside of Sprite decks, it's not too generically powerful. In fact, here is the Master Duel meta breakdown for Sprite Elf, and here you can see the decks that are actually using Elf outside of Sprite. And yeah, when is the last time you've seen these decks actually summon Sprite Elf? This is somebody who is on the cusp of becoming un-TCG brained. On one hand, Sprite Elf honestly isn't doing anything heinous in the game right now, so it can stay without a problem. On the other hand, Sprite Elf unban just feels so wrong, like there's a disturbance in the force. It feels wrong because it's banned in multiple paper formats, but as we've discussed, Sprite Elf is completely fine. Alright, now here is one of the top threads of the month that I know is going to have some spicy replies in it. Casual elitists are so annoying. As you can see, who wants to win? Everybody. Who wants to play meta deck? But who wants to insult others for playing meta decks? There's this sort of attitude that is very prevalent on this subreddit in particular, and honestly within the Yu-Gi-Oh community as a whole, more so than other communities, other TCG communities such as like Magic's community, of this kind of casual elitism. And what I mean, let me define casual elitism for you real quick. Someone who is a casual elitist is somebody who plays the game casually and will tout it as the one true or superior way to enjoy the game. People who play meta decks, they're just netdecking scum who are copying all each other's decks, and they don't actually enjoy the game they play, they just want to win it. That's why you play meta decks. Top comment of the thread. Elitists in general are annoying, be they casual or competitive. A casual elitist will get mad and yell at you for playing a quote-unquote broken deck, regardless of how good the deck actually is. and say you're a meta slave and such. A competitive elitist will look down on you for playing anything that isn't meta and constantly bully you for it. Now, I will say that this kind of person absolutely does exist. The competitive elitist, I'm not going to deny it. There are people who will mercilessly shit talk you for daring to play something that isn't one of the top 6 or 7 decks. However, what I think a lot of people, especially people who enjoy the game in a more casual way, tend to not realize is that these are not the top players that are doing this, right? It's not like Jesse Cotton, Joshua Schmidt, and other top competitors all sit around in Discord calls and, twirl their glasses of wine. Oh, look at this peasant. How could they possibly enjoy Dark Magician? Oh dear, to have the capacity to think like such a lower life form. A lot of these players who actually end up taking the competitive elitist mantle, I find are players who tend to compete at a more mid level, right? Where they'll kind of bounce from tier deck to tier deck without fully learning it or sitting down to learn beyond a basic combo spreadsheet. Again, these are the kind of players who truly only think that the top 6 or 7 decks are what you can use and actually win with in any given time. The people who are more competitively minded and who experience a lot of competitive success will know that there are far more decks than that viable. And that's one of the reasons why there's no point really to looking down on somebody for playing something. You know, even going back to my example of Dark Magician, I don't look down on people who play a Dark Magician deck because Dark Magician is a deck that could, with the right pilot and or the right circumstances, end up sneaking into Master 1 or even getting a tournament top. I think also a lot of the more competitively minded players who are, again, experiencing success at the game know that there's generally no point in doing really either of these, right? Talking down on somebody for playing a tier 1 deck or talking down on somebody for playing a casual deck. It's just not a productive thing to do, no matter which side of the fence you're on. I would much rather use that time and energy to, play the game and improve at it than shit-talking people for how they choose to play the game. I think it's silly that a lot of the meta haters are the same guys that go around literally creating awful non-games by playing a bunch of goofy stun cards in their 2003 Dark Magician, Runic Burn, FTK, etc. decks and then go on about how their deck stomps meta, etc., etc. The mental gymnastics of meta haters is weird, and I refuse to believe most of them aren't either kids or man-children. I hate cash, so I play Naturia, Runic Inspector, Border, Packy Stun. What? What do you mean my deck ruins the game for non-meta too? It's like they really don't get that they're also the bad guy, except everyone, I know, not really, but still, hates them. Even other anti-meta guys. They're stuck in a weird cycle of perpetual victim complex nonsense. While I do think this comment is a bit loaded in some of its statements, it does touch upon something that is very observable, wherein the type of people who tend to be more casually minded, one of their main criticisms about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is full of non-game states. The reason that this sentiment tends to be more common among more casually minded players, I think, is because a lot of casual players will go second against a deck like, let's take Sword Soul for example, right? They'll go second against a deck like Sword Soul, and let's say that Sword Soul sets up Chi Shao, Baron, and Protoss. This board for a lower powered deck would actually be very difficult to break a lot of the time, especially if you're playing a non-optimized lower powered deck. It's for this reason, and also the fact that when they go first and go to make their plays, they'll get stopped by an Ash Blossom or an Imperm, or they'll get hit with Maxi, that to these players, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a game full of non-game states. When in fact, the reason they are experiencing a lot of non-game states is because they are taking a casually powered deck and trying to face off against a competitively powered one. The competitively powered one is able to use its tools in such a free and easy manner because the casual deck doesn't put up the same kind of tools in response that it can completely shut down what the casual player is doing, almost always regardless of going first or second. You don't have to fear going second as much when the other person isn't going to max see you and they just kind of like set a monster in a back row and pass. I think this is also the reason why a lot of casual players will have the rather common complaint that all meta decks ever do is the same combo line over and over again. How could it be fun? When in fact, this is not true of pretty much any meta-relevant combo deck. The reason that they experience the same combo lines over and over again is because, again, they're not playing any of these hand traps or disruption that forces the meta player or the competitive deck player, however you want to say it. It doesn't force these players to go into their different or weird lines. They can just do the standard line over and over and over again without meeting any amount of resistance. The problem is the amount of people playing meta decks. In most game, meta isn't viable or played. Wait, what? In most games, meta isn't viable or played. Huh? Question mark? Okay, let's keep reading. Outside of the top 10% of the player base, but in Master Duel, it's the only thing you go up against. Literally 95% of the games I play do versus the same 6 decks in a game that has 10k cards. That's ridiculous and a waste of 9,700 cards. When you start out at Rookie, almost half your games is versus the self-TK bots up till Gold, and you can't rank down, so you're forced to rank up to Plat, where you see the same 6 decks. In other games, meta is not effective in all levels because 1, the game is more balanced and people can easily win with something low tier, and 2, in other games utilizing the meta is very hard and takes skill to actually use what's broken with it, but in Master Duel, you can just memorize the different flowcharts from different cards. People will do the same Kashira combos in all ranks, and Kashira combos in the boards they end up on can crush 99% of all rogue decks, even going second. Wow, am I like a prophet or what? I think this post literally said, like, all of the fallacies that I've been talking about up until this point. Combo decks only ever do the same combos. You only ever see the same 6 decks. Literally 95% of the games are against the same 6 decks. I will say, they do bring up a actually somewhat interesting point. The one kind of interesting thing we can pluck out of this is that when you start out Wookiee, half your games are versus self-TK bots up till Gold, and you can't rank down, so you're forced to rank up to Plat. This might actually be an issue of how Master Duel's ladder works. For those of you who have ever wondered why you see self-TK bots, a lot of people use it to grind gems and stay at low ranks in order to do so. Because of the way Master Duel works, if you win games at lower ranks, then you're going to rank up, but losing games does not cause you to lose rank. Therefore, even if you are not playing an optimal deck, or you're not playing in a competitive way, you're still going to, in the long term, if you play a lot, end up ranking up. And by doing so, you will end up going into higher ranks such as Platinum, where people are going to tend to use more competitive decks. I think this is the reason why some of these casual players end up against more competitive players, and I think this is also probably the reason why this person has experienced it more in Master Duel than in other games. My stun will outlive your meta. Why bother chasing the newest trend when border plus macro still works well enough? This is a sentiment I do actually see from time to time on the subreddit, which is really funny. It's the idea that, like, stun players are, like, taking on the villain mantle that the community has assigned them. Which, if it's done ironically, it's pretty funny. But if it's not done ironically, it's way more funny. It's actually just hilarious. The problem is the power creep on cards, like Branded and Cash. Lab, you basically have multiple disruptions in hand to beat them. One of the most vile cards is evenly matched in IMO. Okay. Lab has so many ways to get welcome, it's ridiculous. I feel like this person's complaining about 8 different things at the same time, even this first paragraph. One of the most annoying things, how a lot of meta decks can mill from graveyard to hand, or from deck to graveyard to hand, plus the cards benefit them just then by just being in graveyard or hand. It allows them to survive and easily rebuild their boards being broken. Cards like Kaijus or Nibiru won't even stop them. They need to create hand traps that negate all effects. Okay, this is actually the second time I've seen somebody within literally the last week complain about Kashira. Did we not establish that Kashira isn't a problem? I guess not. Another thing that I see is a very common mentality, is the idea that you need cards like Evenly Match or Kaijus to be able to even stand a chance if you go second. which is kind of what this person's alluding to, particularly with this statement that, like, even my Kaijus and Nibiru don't stop them. This is actually a topic I've made a whole separate video about before, about why I don't like evenly matched or cards like it. It's because that these cards are only good going second, and against a lot of decks, they're not even necessarily guaranteed to be able to out their whole board. I think there ends up being this mentality that I need exactly evenly Kaijus or Nibiru because those are good going second cards. But if those aren't even enough to stop them, well then Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just fucked. When what it really means is that you just need to find different tools to stop them. Joel and Lockbird, in particular, very, very effective at stopping a lot of decks. A lot more so than even stuff like Evenly Nibiru right now. But again, it surely isn't a matter of needing to explore my options or expand my mindset about what kind of disruption is good, maybe think about the meta instead of just decrying it. No. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just broken and dumb and because my stuff doesn't work anymore. I just find it hilarious that these people don't even contemplate the fact that many people play a deck/archetype because they like it rather than it being meta. The amount of downvotes I received during the NR event was insane, all because I used Megalith, an archetype that I was using before said event was released. This is very much highlighting something that I was talking about before, but I think this is also very funny and true. This particular example they used, it's kind of wild how when a Master Duel event is coming up, players will be brewing like, I can't wait to see what other decks will be good in this unique event. Wow, a deck like Megalith will finally be competitive and viable. And then it'll be literally 12 hours after the event, and you'll get posts on r/Master Duel. Fuck all you Megalith players making the event unfun, just playing the best deck. It's this, frankly, rather childish mentality that, oh, this thing is popular and good, well then I hate it. Oh, when it wasn't popular and good, oh yeah, no, we talked a lot about it and how much fun it'd be. But no, people are using it, so now it's bad. So this person here, actually, in their reply, says it very, very well. I want to highlight this real quick. Even so, the concept of playing what you like, quote unquote, is so abstract and diverse. An argument people always bring up about X meta deck is, how can that be fun to play? But for a lot of people, the fun of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the competitiveness. If your idea of fun is playing the game at a high level, then you're going to want to play a high level deck to be able to compete with the rest of the meta. Just because a particular meta deck stomps your rogue deck or your favorite pet deck doesn't mean it doesn't have interesting matchups in the format. Could not have said it better myself. 100% true. Sometimes it's not the actual deck itself, but just the competitive play that is fun. I really like that. The idea of playing at full power, it's just always appealed to me. It's a very hard part of my brain for me to turn off a lot of the time. And I don't think that me enjoying that is any less valid than people playing their favorite pet deck. Here we go. Here is an open and proud casual elitist. Let's see what they have to say. This is me, and I won't change. Nothing wrong with wanting to win with my deck, and not some bozo meta deck that every 2 matches I run into. I do this for literally every card game. I don't know why you MFs can't understand that simple logic. And the comment below actually highlights pretty well the sort of flaw in this mentality. It's funny that you call your decks yours when it's just as much yours as a meta deck as someone else's their deck. Player A's branded deck isn't Player B's branded. Even if someone quote-unquote net decks, they're going to end up tweaking things to suit them personally because they won't understand the net decked version entirely. This person is 100% correct. Even if you start off with a list that is just one-for-one copied with a list you found online, one, there's nothing wrong with that. If you think there is, grow up. And two, yeah, even when you copy a list one-for-one, it usually takes most people just a few games of being like, oh, well, or even before they play the games to be like, oh, well, I want to try out this tech, or, oh, this list might be a little bit outdated, so I'll tweak some of the text around a little bit, or, oh, I want to try this engine instead. There's nothing wrong with finding a template for a good jumping off point, especially if you are not familiar with the deck in the first place. Here's an analogy I like to use against the quote-unquote net decking argument. Let's say you're interested in both building and racing cars, but you've never built a car, and you certainly never raced this particular kind of car. Would you take a car that you have built without looking up how to build a car to a race? The answer is no, because that would be fucking stupid. And while I'm not saying it's a requirement that you always have to look up a new archetype or deck before you can just free make a build, I do think that it is, again, a frankly childish mentality to be like, nope, only my own inventions and genius are valid. Anything I get from anybody else immediately makes my accomplishments less noteworthy. And to also apply that logic to others. See, there's a difference between wanting to win and not wanting to play a plainly bullshit deck, which is unfun. Like, what is fun about Cash? What is fun about MathMech? What is fun about Lab? And what is fun about Pearly? All these decks do one thing in common: invalidate your opponent's options regardless of the deck they choose, while equally removing those same options via hand ripping or simply removing them from the field. Like Pearly can legitimately put more spins on board than you have cards in hand. Cash is Cash. Lab hand rips and floodgates. MathMech hand rips and sets up negates. If you cannot make a distinction between fun and winning at any cost, then you are what is referred to in any other game as a tier whore, which simply migrates to what is best and not what you enjoy. God, this person is so insightful that they're able to reach into my mind and tell me what I find is fun. If you cannot make a distinction between the deck is not fun and I don't like that deck, then you are what is referred to in any other game as biased, which simply doesn't see how stupid and subjective their reasoning is. Thank you, OP. Somebody else said it. No. People hate meta decks because it's all you see once you progress past Plat, and it's boring as fuck to play against the same cookie cutter net deck. Are we still saying cookie cutter net deck? People said that on like the Pojo forums back in 2005. It is the year of our Lord 2023. Why are we still using these phrases? Have we not grown up as individuals or a community? The answer is no. The answer is actually no. It pains me very greatly, frankly. I don't care about winning. I care about having fun. Unfortunately, for both meta chasers and people who just play meta decks for the theme/fun, those decks are about stopping the other player from having fun. End boards that take 5 or more minutes to set up and have 3 or more negates, it just makes people angry. Me when my opponent reduces my life points to 0. They're not letting me play, so I'm not having fun. I will say too, this actually isn't entirely casual players' fault. There really is not that many spaces, even within Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, for more casual players to be able to enjoy these casual games. Like, as it stands, you kind of have to make a duel room that says something like no synchro, no exceeds, no whatever, because the only other options are casual ladder and ranked ladder. And casual ladder, I don't know if this is for sure how it works, but from what I can tell, it seems like you will still get ranked up on or matched up on casual ladder with players who share somewhat the same rank as you. Meaning that if one of these casual players finds themselves in a situation where they've played the game for a significant amount of time and are now in Platinum, where there are a bunch of meta decks running around, even turning to casual ladder can make it difficult to not run into these kinds of decks. However, as is the case with this issue and also the issues of not liking how strong new archetypes are, casual players, your gripe is with Konami, not competitive players. The fact that you don't have a space to enjoy the way you play the game in, which is perfectly valid by the way, is Konami's fault, not competitive players' fault. The fact that such strong, blatantly powerful archetypes like tier limits that push just about anything else out of the meta get released is not the fault of the players who choose to play them, but Konami for printing a deck that is so powerful that it doesn't make sense to not play it if you want to see competitive success. And yet, for one reason or another, there are a sect of players who will acknowledge this and still be like, nah, you're still choosing to bring that deck, so fuck you. And these players are definitely ones who are more interested than hating than the actual game itself. Okay, let's pop over to another post here. This meme actually highlights what I was just talking about, where, you know, people are getting frustrated because their opponents set up their turn 1 board. It really is this mentality of like, when they get to play the game, and when I get to play the game. And there was one comment in here that I wanted to talk about in particular. Difference is, I take 2 minutes, they take 10. I play 3, they take 9. Seriously, it feels like these fucks don't even know their own cards and have to read them 10 times while I'm just doing my play in a minute or two and I'm done. So this exchange here is pretty much just a light version of literally 37 minutes, but this actually ends up being yet another fallacy, I think, due to the rank that these players are at, except these people are a little bit more on the cusp of realizing why this is the case as opposed to, again, literally 37 minutes. A lot of time at lower ranks, you'll have players who may not know whatever meta deck they're playing quite as well, and thus will take longer to do their combo lines to try to figure out, what they're doing. This results in some casual players having the mentality of, God, all these meta decks, not only do they do the same thing over and over again, because you don't put up any disruption that forces them to do anything different, but they always take so long to do it, because you're at a lower rank playing against people who are less experienced and therefore taking longer to do the plays. It just ends up all culminating into this picture that people who don't like meta decks will paint, that they're all evil because they're all everywhere, they all take forever, and you can't do anything. When these problems are not a result of other people playing competitive decks, but more so them playing a casual deck in a competitive environment. One other thing that r/Master Duel tends to be known for are its rant posts. Again, as we talked about at the top of the video, Farfa definitely encountered one of these that was since deleted. I can tell you how often in the past when I browsed r/Master Duel, you would just be scrolling through the first page or two and see not just one, but multiple posts that said, rant. Fuck insert, meta deck or card that is played in a meta deck. This is because I think a lot of people who use and browse this site are genuinely more interested in complaining than using that time and energy to improve at the game. Which, if that's how you choose to spend your time and energy, that is fine. However, again, it wouldn't be such a big issue if it was isolated only to r/Master Duel, but the reason I highlight this is because this is a larger issue as well. I can't tell you how many times I've been talking with, somebody random online about like, the Fluanderese matchup for this deck. What do you do when they summon Rabina, and then someone else will chime in and be like, you fucking scoop, cause Flu is a shit deck. God, they just need to ban Impen and Map already. And it's like, okay, alright, you're not being helpful or productive in this conversation. But this is, again, something that bleeds into, in my experience, almost every aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! Discussion. Which is, again, why I feel the reason to highlight the issue that is most prevalent here on r/Master Duel. Here's a rant post from just today. Why does everyone play so slow in the Duelist Cup? Every time there's a DC, I notice this. People duel so painfully slow in the DC. Even basic shit like using Ash Blossom or well-scripted combos take forever. Why is that? Top comment actually does have the correct response. They care more about playing correctly. Also, maybe the server has to work at a higher capacity, so longer communication time. I think those are both valid replies. I want to talk about the reply underneath that and the mentality that we can highlight from it. Yeah, bro, using Ash on the one target you know to Ash is really taxing on meta players' brains. The flowchart taxes their mental stamina. This is yet again somebody who has a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to play the game at a competitive level. Again, they have this idea that every deck does the same combo line every single time. So, therefore, there's always one point where you can Ash Blossom and be done with it. They actually seem to have this idea that, a lot of meta players literally have flowcharts pulled up on their screen. And this is actually kind of funny because I've actually had people ask quite often, hey Hex, can you make a guide of when to use Disruption? And especially lately, although I have tried to make videos like this in the past, it's very difficult. And moving forward, I actually kind of think that, no, you really can't make a video like that. Because there is no one point of knowing when to Ash Blossom a deck. It can depend on the combo line they're doing, what their hand looks like, etc. But again, people who might not have that same experience just tend to see that, oh, they do the same line every time, so you Ash in the same place. And I think this particular sentiment is so anti-intellectual. Like, just the idea of scoffing at the notion that people might want to think about their plays. Because to them, that's how Yu-Gi-Oh! Exists. To them, Yu-Gi-Oh! Metadecks exist in a state where you don't have to think about it. Where it does the same thing every time, when this just fundamentally is not true. Ooh, here's a pretty spicy rant thread from the other day. Why do sweaty tryhards put the casual label on their profile cards? Look, every time I play against the people that combo off for 20 actual minutes, literally 37 minutes, I always check their profile, and every single time, without fail, I see casual, relaxed play, and tags similar to that. Is this a joke? You play Dragon Link Turbo. Cashier, we're really complaining about that again? Plug plus Ultra, that was kind of funny. Labyrinth, Stun, Smooth. Okay, this is the second time Labyrinth has been called Stun. People know that Stun does not equal Trap card, right? And definitely the Labyrinth builds that play Skill Drain are in the minority, so. Sprite Melfi! Whoa! This person's complaining about Sprite Melfi 2 days ago. 2 days ago being, at the time of recording this, December 7th, 2023. When the actual fuck was the last time you saw a straight up Sprite Melfi list anywhere? Oh my god. Pearly, you literally cannot counter me, trollolol.deck, or Necker Valley Stun. You sweat so much you could flood the Sahara Desert. Who are you fooling? Anyway, this Duelist Cup is trash, but hey, when is it now? Best of one is garbage and always will be. Okay, this is another thing that I see often, is people blaming that the game is best of one for why they're losing. I think that, and actually this is another video I want to make a whole, or another topic rather, I want to make a whole video on. Best of one definitely has its pros and cons, but I think the main issue that a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Players in particular have with it is that they're used to playing in tournaments where winning every single game matters, and they don't realize that on ladder, it's fine if it's best of one because you don't have to win every game. But again, that's actually probably just going to be its own topic for another video. We'll talk about best of one and best of one deck building and all of that fun stuff. People care about the profile cards? Edit. Looking at your post history, it seems all you do is complain about losing. Go outside, pick up a hobby, do anything but bitch on Reddit. This is what literally every single person who posts regularly on r/MasterDuel needs to see. Because it's one of the main issues that I have been highlighting as well. The fact that these kinds of unproductive complaints are not only completely overridden in this community, but are also so very prevalent in every aspect of any amount of Yu-Gi-Oh! Discussion. At the end of the day, if you want to vent, that's fine. But if all you do, if the entirety of the way you talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is complaining, then you honestly might just need to find another card game, and that's okay. You might also just need to find a space or a group where you can play with people casually. Again, casual play is something that's entirely valid. I'm not saying that it's wrong to want to play casually. I'm saying that if you have the expectation that you can bring a casual deck to a competitive environment like Master Duel Ranked Ladder and make it to Master 1 every single time with your casual brew, you do not have realistic expectations. And again, it is not the competitive player's fault that there's only one way to play on Master Duel, really, and that's Ranked Ladder. That's Konami's fault. At the end of the day, I'm sure a lot of you are just thinking, you know, why do you care, Lex? You know, just let these people complain and, you know, you've got the Discord. You can talk with your own sphere of people about the game in a, you know, more productive, objective, or competitive, however you want to say it, way. And I think, again, as I've said before, the reason why this matters so much to me is because I am very passionate about Yu-Gi-Oh! And especially how we talk about it, and especially after playing other card games and seeing the kind of ways they talk about the game and the discussions they have. I think one of the things that keeps us from talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! In a more cohesive way is the fact that there are a lot of different spheres and bubbles that are isolated from one another, that are not interconnected, wherein Yu-Gi-Oh! Is being discussed in a productive way. And I think that a lot of the fallacies and sentiments that we've seen on r/MasterDuel are what is obscuring these spheres from connecting with one another on a consistent basis, and us being able to talk about the game in a productive way on a more consistent basis. But hey, I don't know, that's just like my opinion, man. So if you actually made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so very much for watching it. And definitely let me know what you think about this piece. As I've alluded to a couple of times in this video, I am interested in potentially having more discussions like this on the channel. So if that's something you would like to see more, again, definitely don't be afraid to leave a comment down below to let me know. If there's any topics you want me to cover, you can let me know there as well. And you all, the regulars, know I do not do this often, but if you did like this video, you know, feel free to throw a thumbs up on it, or if you found the topic particularly compelling, you know, share it around. If videos like these end up doing particularly well, like I said, I am very, very open to the idea of making this a more regular style of video here on the channel, so. That's going to go ahead and do it for me. Thank you so much, everybody who listened to my ramblings and stuck around through all this. I think, yeah, let's just go ahead and move now to our outro. Alright everybody, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching it all the way to the very end. That means a whole lot to me, and it's also a fantastic way to support the channel. And if you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways besides YouTube, there are plenty of ways to do that. If you check out the description below, you'll find a bunch of links down there. One of them goes to my Patreon. You're actually seeing the names of everyone subscribed to the Patreon on the screen right now. So if you're interested in getting your name in the credits here at the end, if you want to see more daily Master Duel content, or if you're interested in one-on-one private coaching sessions, I offer all of that on Patreon. I also stream live on Twitch. Feel free to go ahead and click that link and follow and or subscribe there. I also have the Discord community, if you want to follow that link, where hundreds of duelists have already signed up. Free to join, and you can just come hang out, talk about the game, and chill in general. Final link that's going to be in the description is my Twitter. You can follow that if you want some more notifications of what's happening with the channel. So, all in all, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.